We all look up to science to solve some of the most challenging problems of our world. But should we, as scientists and as members of society, also ensure that the knowledge produced in our scientific institutions is accountable to our society, in line with our societal values, and actually helps us in addressing our complex social problems? Hello, friends. Welcome to the second part of our series on rethinking science for a complex world. And in this video, we are going to talk about the concept of co-production of knowledge between science and society. Traditionally, science has taken a top-down approach to fixing problems in our society. Scientific knowledge is produced in our academic institutions, which is then disseminated into the society in the form of scientific publications, talks, or conferences, and is expected to be picked up by the government or civil society institutions that can convert this knowledge into tangible solutions that might be beneficial to the society. Or, when scientific knowledge is more specialized and meant for specific applications, academic institutions usually work in partnership with the government or industry to produce technological products or other innovations that can then be used by the society. This approach to problem solving in science creates a separation between society and science and makes the society dependent on the science, state, and industry establishment to solve our problems. Even in the social sciences and humanities disciplines, the usual approach to research has been that we go to a community to collect data, come back and publish our results, and then never get back in touch with the community again unless we need more data. This traditional approach to science and the resulting separation between science and society can pose several problems, especially when dealing with complex societal challenges. For example, there can be differences in how the problem is conceptualized by the scientist and by the community. And it can be difficult for the scientist to see that, although the community's understanding of the problem seems different, it can still lead to addressing the same problem that the scientists have in mind. Communities have their own way of understanding the world, influenced by their cultural practices and traditional knowledge systems, which can be different and sometimes contradictory to the scientific way of interpreting the world. And imposing one knowledge system over another without fully understanding the other can lead to conflicts and lack of trust between the scientists and the communities we are seeking to help. Besides, there can also be differences in values between local communities and the scientists. Differences in values can reflect in the form of internal biases in science itself. Scientific theories often adopt assumptions based on the social and cultural norms of the scientists themselves, which can at times be different from the values of the community where the scientific knowledge is being applied. Therefore, as scientists, we need to go beyond the traditional model of one-directional knowledge transfer or dissemination of science into society, and instead work towards a multi-directional sharing of knowledge, ideas, and cultural practices across the scientific and societal institutions. Besides, solutions to complex societal problems often come from an iterative and dynamic process, and one-time solutions or one-size-fits-all panaceas do not work. Rather, real change comes from a long-term engagement between scientists and society that involves trial and error, getting continuous feedback, and investing in building long-term relationships and trust between scientists and people in the society. This is what is captured in the concept of co-production of knowledge. Sustainability scientists define co-production as a set of iterative and collaborative processes involving diverse types of expertise, knowledge, and actors to produce context-specific knowledge and pathways towards a sustainable future. So essentially, co-production involves a scientific process where the society is involved in every step of the research design, from the identification of the problem, the methodology, analysis of data, to deciding where and how to communicate the findings of the research. Now that we know what co-production is, Let us discuss how we can actually carry out scientific research with communities that is based on the concept of co-production of knowledge. First, we must figure out what is the specific context where the research is being conducted. Identifying the context helps in recognizing what is the scale of the problem, who will be affected by it, and what kind of knowledge systems are relevant for understanding the problem. Next, we need to identify the social communities or people who have a stake in the problem and understand the different needs, interests, values, and belief systems that these people come with. Our responsibility at this stage is to articulate and describe the problem in a way that is based on a contextually relevant language and has a shared understanding of key concepts, terminology, assumptions, and objectives. Next, we need to explicitly define a goal for the co-production research, as it helps the scientists and the communities stay committed throughout the process. Goals and visions often evolve during the course of the project, and there can also be differences of opinions between scientists and community members about what goals are important to them. Therefore, it helps if we collectively revisit the goals regularly and keep a flexible and adaptive approach as we move forward in the project and allow for moments of reflection throughout the process. Next, we need to explicitly recognize the diversity of thought and interpretations that exist within and across different communities in the way they know and understand the world around them. Scientists like to think of themselves as experts, but we must recognize that our expertise is limited to a very narrow or very specific field of study. But in order to address complex societal problems that involve multiple variables, multiple factors, and multiple mechanisms that might affect them, we need to extend the concept of expertise beyond academia and recognize the knowledge of people outside the boundaries of science, which comes from their lived experiences, like working in a profession for several years, or from just living in a place for a really long period of time. Next, we need to have a continuous dialogue among all the stakeholders involved throughout the duration of the project. This means that in every step of the process, from identifying a problem to deciding how to collect and analyze the data and where to share the findings of the research, we need repeated dialogues and regular process of feedback between the scientists and the communities we are working with. Having continuous interactions not only results in constant sharing of ideas, experiences, and values, but also helps in building relationships and nurturing trust among all the stakeholders involved. So to conclude, the co-production process offers a framework for scientists to engage with the society, which is based on mutual trust, sharing of values and goals, and the deliberate, active, and continuous participation of the communities we are working with in all stages of the research project. Although this framework of knowledge co-production comes from the sustainability sciences, it can be applied to any type of scientific research that seeks to benefit society or address the complex problems of our world.